In this tutorial, I'll show you how to set up smart lighting in your studio for recording, live streaming, or just everyday work. First, I'll demonstrate how to control smart lights with your phone, and then we'll move on to some more advanced techniques for controlling your lights using a Stream Deck or a similar keypad device. And for you live streamers, I'll show you how to automate your lights using the MixItUp app for Mixer. I'm Aaron Rutten, and it is my mission to help artists like you be more comfortable in your studio. That's why today I'm teaching you how to spice up the lighting in your studio using smart lights. So first, let's talk about how I use my lights. As an artist who works between a lot of different tasks, I find smart lighting particularly useful because I can easily change my lighting to best suit the type of work I'm doing at any given moment. I'm usually doing general computer tasks or creating illustrations, so I prefer standard daylight in my studio. It's important to me that while I'm working, the color of the lighting in the room doesn't augment my perception of color when I'm creating illustrations or graphics. However, if I'm live streaming or recording, I might want lighting that's a bit more exotic. So to be able to change the lighting at the push of a button is really convenient and fun. So before we move forward with this tutorial, let's talk about some prerequisites. I'll be using the Philips Wiz Connected Smart Wi-Fi LED bulbs, which were about $13 each at Home Depot. Unlike the Philips Hue system, these bulbs do not require a hub as long as you have a 2.4 GHz wireless router in your location. But if you are using the Philips Hue system or some other type of smart lighting, you may be able to follow along with this tutorial as well. I'll assume you already have some lights installed into your fixture, and those lights are paired to your smartphone via the Wiz Lighting app for Android or iOS. I have 4 bulbs installed in my office. 2 are in standing lamps on either side of my background, and the other 2 are in a softbox that I can move around the room for recording or live streaming. You will also need an If This Then That account, or IFTTT, and you'll need to have the IFTTT app installed on your phone. And if you're planning on following the advanced section of this tutorial, you'll need a Stream Deck or a similar keypad device, or software that can trigger websites in the background. If you're planning to trigger the lights during a live stream, you'll need a Mixer account connected to the MixItUp app on your desktop or laptop. So let's go ahead and dive into this tutorial by setting up some lighting scenes on our phone using the Wiz app. You can always come back to this and create more scenes later, but you'll need to create at least one scene to follow along with me. In the Home menu, you can choose custom light colors for each light in your scene. I'll tap on a light to select it, and then I'll go down to Custom Color and I'll choose the Spring Green color. And yes, you have to create custom colors for each color you want to toggle to: red, blue, green, orange, etc. I'll change all of my lights to this color, but you can set yours up with whichever color combinations you like. Keep in mind that if you have 2 bulbs next to each other, the colors will mix together. Once your scene is set up, click on the menu and go to Scenes, and then click the plus button in the bottom right and select the room where the scene is located. Then name the scene. Try to create descriptive yet simple names, because you'll need to remember these later. I recommend creating the most important scenes first, because if you end up with a long list of scenes, it takes time to scroll through to find what you're looking for. I really do wish that this menu were better. Hopefully, as this app is updated, this menu will be streamlined a bit more so that you can do a better job of organizing your scenes and editing and rearranging them. Because it can be difficult to find the scene you're looking for in a list, that's why we're going to be triggering these scenes with buttons on our Stream Deck. Once you have a scene created, you can trigger it on your phone at any time in the Wiz app, as long as you're connected to your 2.4 GHz Wi-Fi network. If you want a different color or scene, just select it on your phone. Now you can stop here if you don't want to get any more technical than this, but for those of you who want to take your lighting to the next level, let's continue on. Now let's take a look at a more advanced way to control our lighting, but first I want to give you an idea of how I'm using my lighting setup. I have my control panel here on my Stream Deck that I can use to manually control the lights while I'm recording, live streaming, or just for everyday use. If I want to change to a lighting scene in the Wiz app, I don't need to go to my phone, I can just press one of these buttons. In addition to that, when events are triggered in Mixer, Patreon, or YouTube, for example, my lights will automatically change to a specific color for a couple of seconds and then return to my live streaming default lighting. And finally, when a Streamloots card is redeemed, depending on the card, the lighting changes for a moment to a specific scene and then returns to the default live stream lighting. The automated lighting is controlled by a free app called MixItUp, but we'll discuss that in a bit. First, let's take a look at how to trigger lighting changes with the Stream Deck. These are programmable keypads that sell for around $150, but a smaller 6-key version and a larger 32-key version are also available for considerably more or less. Mine has 15 keys, and I can program multiple pages of keys, or even create folders of commands. If you're interested in learning how to set up the Stream Deck, I'll link you to a tutorial about that. I'll assume yours is already set up and ready to go. If you don't have a Stream Deck, then you will need a device or software that can trigger web commands from a hyperlink. To run a website command with the Stream Deck, we can simply drag a website command from the System category onto the Stream Deck. Give the button a name that describes the scene. In this case, I'll call it Seafoam. And if I want to, I can also add a simple seafoam colored icon to the button background. Next, we want to check the box that says Access in Background. This is very important because it will run the command in the background without popping up your web browser. So now all we need is a web command to trigger the lights through your Wi-Fi network. Open your IFTTT account and go to Create. This can be found at ifttt.com/create. I recommend doing this on a desktop web browser, not a phone, though you can edit some of this stuff with your phone later. You may also need to grant IFTTT access to certain apps in order for it to work. Make sure to do this whenever prompted. First, we'll click on this, and we'll type Web into the search box. Select Webhooks. This will let you trigger lights or other smart devices from a web link. Next, choose Receive Web Request, and then give the event a name. I'll choose All Lights Seafoam, and I'm not going to use any spaces, although you could use underscores if you like. And then make sure to make note of this name because we're going to need to reference it a lot later. We can click Create Trigger, and then on the following page, click on that. In the search bar, type in Wiz, and then choose Wiz. Now you're presented with all of the types of commands you can trigger for your Wiz lights. You can turn on the lights and choose specific scenes, so I could turn my lights on and trigger my seafoam scene if I like. I can also turn off the lights. I can pulse the lights, which just dims them for a second. I can activate a specific scene. I can dim or brighten the lights to a specific value. And I can toggle the lights between the on and off state, kind of like a light switch. Let's choose Activate a Scene. Next, we'll choose the scene that we'd like to activate. In my case, I'll choose All Seafoam. You'll notice that these scenes are synchronized with the app on your phone. When you're ready, click the button to create the action. Now, if you like, you can choose to send a notification to your phone each time you run this command, but I would recommend disabling this unless you want the notifications going off constantly. Once you click Finish, your command will be ready. You'll need to repeat this process several times to create unique event names for each scene or color you'd like to trigger. For example, All Lights Orange, All Lights Blue, and so on. It's a bit of work, but not too bad. On the following page, you'll see that the IFTTT command should now be active. So that means if a webhook with the event name All Lights Seafoam is triggered, then my Wiz lights will switch to the seafoam scene. You can use the connection button to disable this action at any time. You can also edit the action in the top right settings. Let's click on that. Here you can change the name of the action and toggle whether or not you receive notifications. You can view a log of when the action has been run, and you can check the connection to verify that it works. You can also edit the event name and edit which scene is activated by the event. Click on Save to return to the action. Now we need to get the code to trigger commands via webhooks. Click on the webhooks icon or go to ifttt.com/maker_webhooks and then click on Documentation. The code on this page should remain private. Do not show the contents of this page to anyone or accidentally share it online, because if you do, then anyone with this code and your event names can trigger those events. Make note of your key. This will be required to link IFTTT to other services like MixItUp later. Now to trigger an event, we will use the hyperlink below in a browser or web command. Where it says event, we will replace that with the event name we want to trigger. So in my case, I want to trigger All Lights Seafoam. So I'll type that into the event name. Then I can copy and paste that link into a web browser, or I can click on the test button to verify that it works. But before we click the test button or trigger the action, let's go back to our phone and the Wiz app, because we'll need to manually change our scene to something else. If you have another scene, you can choose that. If not, then just change some of the lights. Now, if you click on the Test It button, the lights should change to the correct scene after a second or two. Keep in mind this trigger has to go through your computer to the internet and then through Wi-Fi to your device. So there's a bit of lag which could be greater or lesser depending on your internet connection and computer hardware. It's also worth mentioning that triggering this stuff through IFTTT requires an internet and Wi-Fi connection that is shared by your computer and the lights. As a backup, your phone will always be able to control the lights as long as you have Wi-Fi access. And of course, you can disable the lights at any time by turning off the power to your fixture. If your lights changed after testing the event, then you're on the right track. If not, ensure that your event name matches the one you chose when you created the event. And watch out for typos. Feel free to copy the generic event link for later use, but again, be sure not to make it public. Now click back to Service. You'll be able to view and edit all of the webhooks you've created on this page. You can now create more scenes if you like by repeating the process I just described. Just go to ifttt.com/create. If you go to ifttt.com/Wiz, there are also some easy-to-use presets for Wiz that you can install instead of using the webhooks. For example, you can choose Turn on a scene with a single tap. If you connect the IFTTT app to your phone, you can make a button on your phone's home menu that triggers events. For example, I have a button to turn my default office lighting scene on, a button to turn my lights off, and a button to choose a random scene. Do have a look through this list of presets because it'll give you an idea of how many different ways you can trigger your lights. And if you don't have a Stream Deck, these buttons on your phone are just as good and you can stop here. But if you want to trigger these events with your Stream Deck, now all we need to do is paste the event link into our web command button in the Stream Deck control panel. Now if you test your button on the Stream Deck, it should trigger your event. Feel free to copy and paste this button, and then just change the icons and event names in the link to run other actions. Note that I have a button for each scene or color I want to activate. You can even make folders of buttons and multi-action buttons if you want to trigger multiple events in a sequence. For example, I have a multi-action button to turn the lights on and off. I also have a folder with a command for choosing a random lighting scene or to activate my default lighting scene for live streaming. Once you've set up events in IFTTT and linked them to buttons on your device, you should now be able to use your phone and/or your Stream Deck to control your lights. Pretty cool, huh? There are lots of other smart devices and web services that can trigger your lights with IFTTT, so have a look around when you get a chance. Now let's discuss triggering the lights in a live stream using MixItUp. If you live stream on Mixer, you can also trigger your lights using external events with the MixItUp app. I'm not going to go into detail about how to set up MixItUp from scratch, but if you're already somewhat familiar with the app, I can at least show you how to trigger your lights. First, go to Services and choose IFTTT. Link your IFTTT account to MixItUp. You'll need the webhook key I mentioned earlier that is available in the documentation on the webhooks page of IFTTT. I'll assume you've already set up MixItUp integrations with Patreon, Twitter, or whatever else you want to trigger with MixItUp. That's required for MixItUp to be able to see the events and trigger the lights. Now go to Action Groups and create a new action group with an advanced command, and I'll add an action for IFTTT. Click the plus button to apply the action. I'll call it Lights Seafoam, and then choose your event name for the webhook. You don't need to put in the whole link here, you just need the event name. When you're finished, click the Save button. Now, if you use the play button, you should be able to test the action. If the action works and it triggers the lighting scene, then you can return to the action to add other commands if you like. If you're familiar with MixItUp, then you know how you can use these actions to trigger other things like graphics and sounds. But let's take a look at another way to trigger lights with events. Here you can trigger your IFTTT actions automatically when an event occurs. For example, when someone follows your channel on Mixer, or when you get a new subscriber on Patreon. I'll choose Mixer, Channel Followed, and then I'll click the Add Command button. Next, I'll add an IFTTT action for the All Lights Seafoam webhook event. Now, when I get a follower on Mixer, the event will trigger and my light will change. The catch is that MixItUp must be running on your computer to get the signal that you've received a follow. Same goes for capturing activity on YouTube, Twitter, Patreon, etc. Now, if you want, you can trigger additional events. For example, after I trigger my initial light change, I can add an action to wait for 2 seconds, and then trigger another IFTTT action that changes my light back to a default scene. So if I test the event with the play button, my light changes to seafoam for 2 seconds, then goes back to my default live streaming scene. Now, depending on what you want to do, you can also trigger an action group when an event occurs. Because of how I want to use my lights, it made sense to do it this way, but you can feel free to set this up however you like. If I go to another event for Streamloot's card redeemed, I have some conditionals that determine what color lighting I activate for each card. These conditionals trigger an action group that has its own IFTTT commands to trigger lighting events. When this particular card is played, my lights change to red. Then after a timer or an animation have completed, the lights will return to their default state. I've created a timer by going to Overlay Widgets. These are timer widgets, and on timer completion, I have an IFTTT event to change the light. I have a sound effect. I wait 2 seconds, and then I have another IFTTT event that changes the lights back to their default state. You can also trigger these MixItUp action groups with your Stream Deck by installing the MixItUp plugin on your Stream Deck. And that's it. You should now be able to automate your lighting when an external event is triggered using MixItUp. And now for my conclusion. I'm having a lot of fun with these smart lights. They're very practical and at the same time kind of entertaining, and it's a good mixture of both. I can use it to control the lighting to have regular office lighting, then I can easily change that same lighting with a push of a button to suit a recording situation where I might want more exotic lighting, or a live streaming situation where I might want to have automated lighting or control my lights on the fly. And of course, if you're using real physical models like this skull here, you can move the skull around and move your lighting around and change the colors, and that really helps when you're trying to paint accurate lighting. And honestly, it wasn't a huge investment. I'm surprised to see that the cost of these bulbs has come down, and with all these other free apps that can integrate with the bulbs, it's really a great way to implement advanced lighting in your studio. If you're interested in purchasing some of these lights, there's an affiliate link in the description of this video. And be sure to trigger my lights by becoming a member of my YouTube channel or following me on Mixer during my next live stream. I'll put links to all that in the video description as well. And here's some helpful videos about color theory if you're interested in learning about how to set up different combinations of colors for your lights, and a playlist of my live streams so you can see what I'm doing with my lights. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.